Hey, if you watched the previous lesson on linear gradient, well, radial gradient is going to be very similar. So I'm not going to do a whole lot of changes to the code. I'll update the property values with radial gradient instead of linear gradient. And there's also positioning of the radial gradient. So let's save the first one. And all I did is update from linear gradient to radial gradient. Let's check it out, and that's being applied to the first one. So you see that the first color is the inside color, and it's moving out from the center point of the element. So starting out with green and then red, and you can also add additional colors. There's also positioning of where the colors are stopping. So let me update number 2, element with a class of 2, to radial gradient, and have a starting position for the color. So specifying the first color, which is going to be green, and number of picks that green is going to go. All you have to do is separate it with a space and then comma separate the different property values. You can also use percentages as well. So do a 25%. And then the last one can be blue. You can also use hex color values and also percentages for the values. So let's check it out. And this one was on percentages. So it started out green in the center, then red to the 25%, and then the remaining percentage was blue. And those are the color stop points. So it provides you a position for each radial to stop at. So it would stop at roughly around 40% for the blue color. You can also change the position of the center of where the radial gradient starts. So let me update number 3 with radial gradient. We'll keep the colors the same and we'll set the starting position. So you can do that with at. And then where you want it to start. So we're going to use percentages for where we want to start. So 0 and let's do 20%. And then comma separate it for the color values. So number 3 is going to be starting at this position and then moving to red and finally to blue. So I'll just show the source code. So for 3, we've got position the radial gradient starting out at the 0% and down 20% from the top. Then we've got green 20 picks, we've got red 25, and lastly we've got blue covering 40% of the available space within the element. There's also for the closest side value. So let's update that for element with a class of 4. So specifying the ellipse and then closest side, and that's a dash side, and just save that. So the ellipse closest side, which means that the size is set to the distance from the starting point or the center to the closest side of the enclosing box. Let's also add in a percentage and then also a percentage for the, or we'll just wrap it up with the red color. For the element with a class of 4, so we've got a radial gradient. We're using ellipse with the closest side. Green is 10% and then afterwards red. And quickly, we'll also cover the conic gradient. So this is a conic gradient, and there's 2 colors in it, and you can, by default, have the center of the gradient at the 50-50 mark. So instead of linear gradient, let's update this to conic, and that's going to require the 2 values. So this has a starting point, and it's kind of like the clock motion where the first color is going to be green and then it's going to rotate around and wrap up at red. So it's got this kind of cone shape that comes in the middle there as the colors rotate around. You can add additional colors as well. You can also have a starting point for it. So setting a starting point. So you can specify that the conic gradient and where it's going to start. We'll keep all these colors into the conic gradient. And let's set the starting point using at and the various key terms of where we want it to start at. So this one has 4 different colors. So that's providing us a 0 point for the starting point of 0, and then moving it down by the percentage that we specified. And that's in relation to the size. So and these will resize as well. So that one as well has the starting point, and that's also a conic gradient that starts with green, goes to red, blue, and then finally purple. There's also what's a repeating linear gradient, and where we can specify the linear gradient properties that we had seen earlier, and you just put the word linear or repeating in front of the linear gradient, and that's going to change it to a repeating linear gradient. And I'll also update the size of these to a pixel value. So I have it 5 pix and 10 pix for blue, and then also just yellow. So let's specify the number of pix for yellow and refresh. So that gives this kind of striped format coming in from the left side and then going red, blue, and yellow for the different pix values. And you can also do a repeating radial gradient as well. So let's add one to the header. So repeating radial gradient, which gives a really neat rounded effect. Just got to make sure that I selected the element properly. So I do have one called header, and the 2 left doesn't belong there. That's why it wasn't showing up. So we refresh it and we get this type of pattern. And then of course, as you adjust the numbers and the values, the way that it's being output will adjust as well. You can also add multiple gradients. And for there, it's suggested that you use the RGBs. So those are overlapping gradient backgrounds. So try it out, have some fun with it, and try out all the different things that you can do with gradients.